good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or good day to everyone. Please confirm you can hear me well, loud and clear, and that you can see my slides. Great. Okay, so welcome everybody to today's webinar. This is the second of the series. The theme of today's webinar is navigating innovations ecosystems with the triple helix model. And we would be sharing insights for corporate innovation. I won't spend time talking about corporate innovation yet because we have very able guests here, the keynote speaker and the panelists who will do justice to the topic. I would introduce myself here. My name is Odiong Akpan. I lead Ubulu Africa as an innovation management organization. We focus on making innovation work through collaborative creativity, and that's with emphasis on corporate innovation, university-industry collaboration, and startup ecosystem support. I would moderate the session, and I would guide all the procedures throughout today's webinar. I would spend some time here to talk through the agenda. And so the first couple of things we'll do here will be the opening formalities, which includes what I'm doing now and a bit of introduction. And thereafter, there will be an opening remark from the president of the Triple Helix Nigeria. When he is done, there will be a keynote address by our keynote speaker. And thereafter, we will have a panel session. We have 3 panelists today. Most of the questions you might have as an attendee, we will be glad to take them in the chat boxes. So please stay engaged, and we will have a question and answer session after the panel session. We would allocate about 15 minutes for that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for the debates, but we would at least take as many questions and field as many questions as possible so that we will have an engaging session or webinar. At the end of the question and answer session, we will have the closing remarks by the Vice President Innovation of Triple Helix Nigeria, and thereafter we would close. So once again, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. I implore you to, I'd say, participate, but listen dedicatedly, because there are a lot of nuggets of wisdom that will be shared. And of course, engage in the chat box with your questions, which will be answered thereafter. And thank you once again for joining. At this point, I'm supposed to hand over to the president of Triple Helix Nigeria, which is Mr. Abdul Malik Halilu. Unfortunately, he is in transit and he can't do the opening remark himself. So I would be passing the mic to the Vice President Innovation of Triple Helix Nigeria, Mr. Tangod Egbe, to do justice to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Odion. Good evening, all. Always nice to connect and discuss Triple Helix. The president actually sent his regret. He tried all he could do to be here, but for official reasons, he's not able to make it. So he actually requested that I present this on his behalf. Right. So take up about Triple Helix. We've been in the journey of getting Triple Helix to Nigeria for the past 3 years. And last year, we were able to secure international recognition to actually get the Nigerian chapter from Europe. We attended a conference last year in Italy to be able to get the Nigerian chapter recognized, and we presented our vision, which is the vision 10-10-10-10. Our vision is in the next 10 years, we should be able to get 10 universities that will have 10% equity in 10 listed companies. So it's basically commercialization of research in Nigerian universities. Of course, that aligns with our mission, which is basically to accelerate the democratization and commercialization of innovation in research-oriented institutions, where students' projects, the PhD work, are actually commercialized, where we start looking at bridging the gap between the university and the industry with support from government. That's basically our own approach to Triple Helix in Nigeria. We have Triple Helix in 6 regions. We actually had Nigerian chapter last year, which basically opened and completed the 6th region, because we had 5 regions before now without Africa. So Nigeria on the 1st of December, with the support from National Universities Commission, with the support from NCDMB and support from Cypher Crescent, we were able to successfully launch Triple Helix in Nigeria last year, December. And we have a couple of webinar series to actually sensitize our followers, our members, and other stakeholders in the ecosystem about the mission of Triple Helix. And all things being equal, by the end of the year, framework that can be used to actually achieve our vision 10-10-10-10, to actually help universities to put up a framework to help them achieve get 10 equities in listed companies. All right, so looking at the main objective of for us, Triple Helix in Nigeria is basically to actually increase our global innovation index. Look at where we sit in Nigeria. It looks dark where we are, and then you look at the countries who actually innovate: United States, China, and of course, most of the companies around Europe. And one thing is common around there is basically empowerment of universities. The universities are actually driving innovation based on a Sustainable Development Goal 9. Start looking at industrialization, infrastructure, and innovation. So we are not actually doing very well in Africa. We're not doing very well in Nigeria, basically because of that gap that exists between the university and the industry. And our objective with Triple Helix Association is basically to see how we can increase our score to comparable countries that we use to benchmark our performance in Africa. We benchmark with Brazil. They have innovation index above 30, and also Indonesia. They have about the same size. We use Brazil and Indonesia because they have about the same size with Nigeria. And we try to see that with Triple Helix, where we are able to empower universities to solve problems of innovation in companies, and we'll be able to see how to do so. Most of the things we'll be discussing here, of course, we have experts around the room who are going to contribute their quota to telling us more about innovation. Today we'll look at corporate innovation and how we can improve innovation in Africa and in Nigeria. All right, so the big question now is, how can Triple Helix help us to increase corporate innovation? We are here to discuss corporate innovation. We're here to discuss under the umbrella of Triple Helix. The experts will tell us more about it. How do we get mature companies? How do we get big companies to improve innovation? People look at innovation as basically driven by startups. But you create our innovation index, we won't have the very big companies to innovate. Of course, when they are doing that, they will have to bring in the universities. We'll have to think of how to send most of their research problems to universities to actually help them to innovate. To start looking at institutions, the infrastructure, market sophistication, and the creative output we need to get from that. So our objective as Triple Helix Nigeria is basically to mobilize the university and also discuss with the industry, to cooperate with the university, and with very good support from government, which we already have from most of the government institutions, and thanks to National Universities Commission, thanks to the regulators who are actually supporting the Triple Helix agenda, for us to look at how do we improve the innovation ecosystem with people actually doing innovative research. So on behalf of Triple Helix Nigeria, I thank everybody and wish us a very good deliberation. Thanks for joining.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vice President of Triple Helix Nigeria. And I will join voices with him to say welcome and thank you for joining us. We're doing good on time, so I would switch gears into the next segment, which is a key aspect of what we are doing today. We have a keynote speech being delivered by Mr. Abubakar Suleiman. And I will just read through his profile here. This one pager does not do justice to his profile. He's someone who many people know has been championing innovation in the bank. And so I'll just read through here. Mr. Abubakar Suleiman has 25 years of experience in consulting and financial services, and is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Bank PLC. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Abuja and the Masters of Science in Major Program Management from the University of Oxford. His previous work experience includes tax advisory at Otto Anderson and financial markets with Citibank Nigeria. He is a firm believer in the role of efficient markets, emerging technologies, and small businesses in unlocking productivity, improving national competitiveness, and driving inclusive economic growth. He serves on the advisory boards of Lagos Business School and the Enterprise Development Center of Pan-Atlantic University. So I would like to say thank you, Mr. Abubakar, for joining us and giving us your time. And we look forward to hearing the nuggets of wisdom you want to share with the audience. I think at this point, you would like to share your slides. Please confirm, are you sharing your slides?
Yes, the slide should be up in a moment. Okay, good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and if it is morning, wherever you are, good morning or good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me open by thanking the Triple Helix Nigerian team for the work you've done. I've had the honor of watching this from the sideline. And so when I got an invitation and asked if I would like to join this conversation this evening, I did not hesitate to say yes, because more than anyone else, I've been able to see what good can come out of the effort of a few good men. But I also want to thank the members of the National Universities Commission that may be present. Again, that has also been an impactful part of this journey, not just because of the support they've given Triple Helix Nigeria, but because of the extra work they've done to transform tertiary education in Nigeria. I have also had the honor of watching that from the sideline through the work we've done with the NESG. I'm also, hopefully will be public information soon, joining the board of trustees of two of the universities that the NUC has approved. This explains why the opportunity to be in the middle of this conversation is something I would not have missed out on. I think that the future of this country depends on how well this conversation can happen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to explain what Triple Helix is. It is, it's safe to assume that everyone who has made the time to join probably know more about the framework than I do. I've had to, sort of freshen up so that I'm not completely lost on this conversation. What I will be able to do, however, is to take a practical perspective based on the experience that I've had leading an organization that is both a listed entity on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and an organization that has been around since the same year Nigeria became independent, as well as one that has attempted to lead in the field of innovation and effectively compete against startups in that field. It's a unique place to try to stand. You are being forced by the pressures and the forces of an established corporate entity and what that implies in terms of what is your work culture, what are the way you present your organization, what is your brand, versus creating a workplace that attracts the most innovative people and giving them the tools they need to innovate. So it is a unique position, and I'm hoping that the experience we've had in that space will be helpful to those who are here this evening. But beyond that, I'm hoping that I will end up challenging some of the convictions that we have, some of the assumptions that we have opened with, and some of the ways that we have attempted to push innovation forward in corporate organization. Hopefully, I won't challenge it so much as to be kicked out of here by the academics and the experts. So I think when we look at the definition of triple helix, right, one of the things that I like to do is to expand that understanding. Yes, we talk about industry, and I think that to a large extent that hasn't changed much. But if you expand the definition of industry, I would include private capital, even where it is not coming from industry. So sometimes the basis for that collaboration is private capital that is not yet in the form of a structured company. And that is because when this conversation started in the 1990s, or when you date it back to the earlier conversation in the 50s that laid the foundation for this, private capital almost always existed in the form of an industry. Today, that can actually happen without an industry behind it. The latest example was a $50 billion plus acquisition of Twitter by effectively an individual rather than an industry player. So we need to expand the mental definition of industry. I also think that the definition of government should also, we should be a little bit, should be more accommodating when we think about what constitutes government. It is true that the regulatory powers vested in government, the power to make laws, the power to enforce laws, and the power to convene is a huge part of it. But increasingly, we are seeing entities that can also convene that are not the government. So for instance, the capacity of the World Bank to convene and to put resources behind ideas and in a way to advocate means that when we think government, we should also imagine that they are part of that part of that particular pillar of the tripod. And finally, academia. And I think this is where I hope to be a little bit to challenge or push a little bit. In a lot of the definition, we think of academia, we've expanded that to be university, or we've constricted that to be university. What we are finding increasingly is that a lot of what happened in university can and will happen elsewhere. And it's now left for the university to decide whether they would reach out to accommodate those thought process, those research, those new knowledge, or how the relationship would evolve. So a good example is a lot of the research that has gone into startup ecosystem have actually not come from the traditional academia. So they are not the product of PhD researchers in universities. They are most likely desktop research that have been carried out by individuals who have enough sense of the market to figure out what the market wants. And to some extent, some valuable innovation will come out of that. Obviously, at the core of innovation, we have to still go back to STEM, which is deep research that will then create the foundation for the future. But beyond that, I also see increasingly a situation where the research that we need is now happening within the institution themselves, rather than happening in academia. And we need to bridge the gap between university and industry, because that gap in the age of technology is increasingly not as it's not as clear-cut as it used to be. We now have a lot of people doing valuable research in industry, and therefore academia should be able to come and put the framework around those research so that they can become peer-reviewed research. We also have, as we've seen in a lot of universities, industrial production that are beginning to happen. Again, we need to close that gap so that industry is then going into those spaces to accelerate and scale those kind of conversations. I like this definition, a spiral model of innovation, which is able to capture multiple reciprocal linkages at different stages of the capitalization of knowledge. So there's an agreement here that what we are trying to capitalize is knowledge, and that in a sense, the economic poverty of a country is a failure to capitalize knowledge. If we agree that knowledge and talent is evenly distributed, it is our ability to turn it into valuable assets that may not. So I like that. This is the spiral. You think about it as, there are so many linkages that you cannot capture unless you bring government, industry, and the academia together. And so this is the thought process. Again, you can see the different roles that different parts of the ecosystem is playing, right? Industry tends to come in after the research is done. They also tend to come in some cases, like this is an energy ecosystem, after some proof of concept and some high-risk issues have been removed. And so when industry comes in, it's almost a ready-to-bake or ready-to-eat sort of environment. But what we need to see is for industry to begin to backward and become more involved in the experimental part of value creation, and in fact, become more involved in research. And the question becomes, what is the motivation for that to happen? How do we get industry to do more than just wait for the finished product or wait for the IPs and try to purchase those IPs to then commercialize them? There is real value when industry is involved at the research stage, because it changes the nature of the question that need to be answered. And there's a lot more input from what the consumer at the final leg would expect with what the research is focused on. So again, this idea that it is not some kind of sequential work where there is research and then there is some kind of effort from government, where government is interested in sort of moving the research forward and finally get to industry. That sequencing itself can become a problem. We need a situation where these activities are going on concurrently and are going on in all of the aspects of the Helix side. It's not just one at a time. And so the key question is, and please forgive me because I'm going to be limiting a lot of my conversation with financial institution and then to Sterling Bank. But I understand that industry is a much broader conversation, and the way this works out in the rest, in other industry, for instance, will be different. But what does it mean, right? What does corporate innovation mean? Because the nature of companies is really they're designed to take existing infrastructure and to optimize them. That's when you become a corporate. At that point, your role is primarily to optimize. How do you take assets that you have or you can purchase, and then you create a scaling platform where those assets generate the highest possible profit? That's how we've come to understand how the corporate works. If you're now trying to push corporate and ask important conversation like creating, innovating, especially at a time when innovation tends to actually be the nail, on the coffin of the existing IP, it becomes a much more complicated question, right? But the thinking is, I like this view that was put forward by Dr. Vidya that says, progressive organizations increasingly seed in the areas of interest to them. So the innovation part becomes a lot easier to digest for a corporate when you think of it as seeding, right? Because traditionally you think you're going to have to think it through, create something, and then kill what you have. But if you think of it as a hedge, as a way of saying, you know what, things are going to happen, things are going to change, technology will move forward. I may not be the one that will think it through end to end, but if I commit to seeding the areas of interest, in other words, find students that are doing research in the field of interest, find a startup that is beginning to experiment in the field of interest, find organizations that can collaborate with you and sort of seed areas where innovation can happen. It is an easier thing for a corporate to digest than for them to actually innovate. And there's a reason for this, right? When you think about it carefully, what are corporations judged by? They're judged by financial performance, purely, in most cases. But when it comes to innovation, financial performance is a long way down the road. There's a lot of work that has to happen before you begin to make money out of your innovation. And so the executives at a point in time have no real motivation to focus their energy on creating value that will not be extracted during their time. So this comes down to the issue of whether you are exploring or you are exploiting. Corporations are very good for exploitation. They are not particularly good for exploration. And again, when you think about the way the hierarchy that protects corporation or large organizations, those hierarchy tends to be innovation killers because the nature of innovation has to be a lot more spontaneous. There has to be a lot more freedom of operation. There has to be room for errors. All of these are not part of the characteristics of a traditional corporate. Sterling Bank, for instance, we've tried to solve for that problem by creating a strategy and innovation division that has the budget to do research and development. And this budget has grown more than tenfold over the last 5 years. That budget allows them to spend money for which there is no profitability accountability at that point in time. The basis for the expense is what are the potential value that could be extracted? What are the new IP that could be created? What is the new market that we can expand into? That kind of thinking has led us to create, for instance, an asset we call Fairmall, which is trying to create a digital market for people who are in rural Nigeria so they can take their product to market. That is not likely to generate profit anytime soon, but it's likely to sort of be a market creating innovation, the sort of thing that opens a new market that wasn't there before. And of course, being the first to the market, you will then benefit from that. That kind of thinking is not very common yet, but we believe that that's the thinking that will lead to significant innovation. Let's look at some of the reason why corporate innovation is so difficult. Think about it, right? Up until recently, the thinking is that maximizing shareholder value is the ultimate and sometimes the only aim or the only objective for a corporation. And a lot of people, especially in Western capital markets, have taken this to the extreme, where they will do anything possible to boost the price, the share price of the organization. And so it's not just about revenue or even profit, it's about share price. And a lot of the things that will lead to increase in share price are not necessarily things that are thinking about 5 to 10 years. So you look at the graph on the right side, and you look at the time it takes in years from when you experiment and you do research and development to the point where you go to market and scale, it is significant. In most cases, a lot of the work has to happen over a period of close to 5 years before you can go to market. When you look at the average tenure of a CEO of a corporate, it is about 4 years on the average in contract terms, but in real terms, in many cases, it's less than 3 years now. That doesn't leave room for someone to make commitments that are about long-term value creation. And until we start to rethink how we do this, how corporates are set up and what they are valued, how they are valued and what is measured, if we don't do anything about that, the chances are that increasingly we'll continue to focus on optimizing short-term value rather than creating long-term value through innovation. Just a little bit on how do we do it, right? You know, how can we do this? Well, the first point is I go back to say, let's think about the university not as a physical space. Let's start to think about the university or think of academia as all places and spaces where the quality of research that is usually associated with university campuses can now happen. Even where those researches have not yet been conducted to the standard, the peer review standard that is needed in university, they sometimes can lead to value creation because they provide the input for industry to create products and services. So let's start to think about where can this happen? A good example of how we at Sterling Bank are going about this, and this takes me, and I sort of segue a bit into what Sterling Bank has positioned itself to do. We have chosen what we call the heart sector, and the heart sector will present the 5 sectors that we are primarily focused on. And the H is for healthcare or healthcare financing. The E is for education. The A is for agriculture. R is for renewable energy, and T is for transport. We identified those 5 sectors as areas where we need to become the dominant player or a very competent player to drive innovation and to then drive our business. What we're doing in education, for instance, is to say that if you look at the deficit across the education value chain, from the deficit of physical infrastructure, where we are only able to accommodate just over 2 million people, and there is a demand for at least, in our own estimate, 10 million people in institutions of higher learning. When you look at the deficit of access to faculty members, where some of the best faculties we have moved offshore, and that is likely to continue to happen. We think about the deficit in the relationship between industry and academia in terms of how we build the education curriculum and how we bring practical experience into work. When we thought of all of that, we concluded that the future of education would require the student to be embedded not full-time on campus anymore, and not be on campus and go for internship, but to be primarily resident in workplaces, in the industry. And their engagement with academia will be through digital learning and through limited visits to the universities. That is the only way you can move from 2 million to 10 million. But the beauty of that model is that suddenly the research that is going on in the universities are being carried out by people who are also practically visibly participating in industry, meaning that they actually can feel firsthand what the industry is thinking and what the consumers are thinking. So hopefully that thought process of bringing industry and the university together as one learning ecosystem, which also allows us to begin to provide additional funding to the university system, that thinking will then lead to the destination we are headed. We also believe that understanding where knowledge lies, where is knowledge today, right? A lot of it is still in the university ecosystem, but increasingly knowledge can be found outside the university ecosystem. And the university, if it wants to continue to play a significant role, must begin to embrace knowledge wherever it is found, even where it is not yet organized or codified according to the high standards that they have set. Again, we believe that as an institution, and this is what we've done, we need to begin to drive advocacy rather than work with what government has determined is best. We need to push government to determine what is best for industry and what is best for academia. So we found ourselves increasingly involved in advocacy And we've realized that that gives the best platform for a collaboration. A good example, of course, is again the NUC and how it has worked very closely with industry in arriving at where it is today. Increasingly, even though the time it takes for innovation to get to the optimum level where it is, we can then be commercialized, is getting shorter, it is still a long time. It means that the disconnect between industry, where profitability is measured as a quarterly performance, and the demand of innovation, which requires us to think long-term, still needs to be reconciled. That reconciliation needs to happen at the level of the individual companies. They need to understand the need to protect the future of the company by investing in innovation, but it also needs to happen as a decision, is effectively a government-led decision to encourage corporations to invest in innovation. And that's probably the only way we can accelerate that thought process. I don't necessarily, subscribe to forcing innovation, but I subscribe to rewarding innovation. And therefore, government must think of how it rewards those who invest in innovation, either through tax break or through some other sort of grants and funding that makes it more attractive to corporation. As I round up, I want to share a couple of ideas on how corporate can innovate, even despite the fact that they've got the obstacle of short-term return as demanded by shareholders. And in some cases, they've got a problem of what I would call the conflict between the innovation ecosystem, the kind of culture that drives innovation, and the kind of culture that protects assets, that protects large organizations. They tend to be different. So our thought process around how you can make this happen is, one, to co-create with government. There's a massive, massive opportunity for innovation that can scale when you co-create with government. For instance, Sterling Bank is co-creating the state identity banking platform using the Lagos State model, where they have Lagos State identity card. And we have then introduced a digital card that allows you to access all of the services that the state can provide, but also access banking services. That kind of co-creating and thinking things through with government is very useful. And the same way, the new AfriGo card that is coming up, there is a collaboration with NIN to ensure that the card can then obviously be seamlessly issued using NIN. That is the kind of co-creation we talk about. We also want to embed research in companies. I've already spoken about this. I think more and more, I would encourage the universities to send their researchers to find hosts in industry for their researchers, to find hosts that would take them full-time, not the sort of part-time visit that we see today, that will force the researchers to truly understand industry as they do their research. We also need to invest in startups that are based on research. This is one area where, unfortunately, there's a huge struggle. Most of the startups that are getting capital today are not based on fundamental research coming out of our universities. That needs to change. In many cases, the students themselves who have come out of the universities have not developed their research to the standard that academia would recognize. There has to be a way to encourage them, even as they commercialize, to develop the research further. And that will come from we investors demanding for a certain quality. We also need to create learning ecosystems that integrate universities and industry, and I've spoken about that. When we started with one of the digital universities recently, we gave a scholarship to 50 students that are being embedded in our offices while going through their program in the university. We now need to do this for higher level learning for people who are doing PhD level kind of studies, because that's where the high quality research comes from. We need to integrate education into the workplace. Again, this is something that I'm very passionate about. There are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of comfortable learning spaces that are available in corporates across Nigeria that can become an extension of the learning environment, especially now that technology will enable us to integrate that directly with the universities. There are also tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of very competent Nigerians who are currently in industry that have the basic education required to begin to participate in teaching. And so we need to be able to reach out to industry to pull talent from industry on a part-time basis to be part of the academic ecosystem. We need to explore advanced knowledge using AI. I've limited this to AI for now, but the point I'm making is that some of the research work that was originally done by students are increasingly being carried out using technology in different forms. And we need to remain open to the fact that some of the innovation knowledge that we need to commercialize would reside in non-human research forms. We need to create an environment for workplace experimentation. I think I should not underestimate this. Most workplaces do not reward experimentation because by the nature of experimentation, they are more likely to fail than succeed. Most workplaces are designed to reward success only. And until we change that, experimentation will not happen in workplace. And finally, we need to create commercial models that reward universities. The current model that we run our universities with, especially the government-owned and government-funded universities, and they account for almost 95% of the student body today, does not reward the commercialization of ideas of knowledge. That's a huge setback. We need to get to the point where whatever knowledge is created within the university ecosystem that can be commercialized using partners from industry must then reward the academia themselves. When we do that, when we get skin in the game, when we give them a motivation to commercialize this knowledge, they would actually ensure that the knowledge gets commercialized. These are our rough ideas on how things can be done. Some of them we've experimented ourselves. Others are still ideas in phases. I encourage everyone who is here today to please continue to share with us ways that we as industry can also learn, because this is us industry telling you what we want from government and what we want from academia, but we are also open to learning from yourself. So thank you very much. It's been an honor having been here today to speak with you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's some, I know the time was short, but I'm sure I've seen a lot of reactions on the portal. So I'm sure people are very happy with what they've heard. We are probably going to have some more of this in future sessions. But thank you very much, Mr. Boubacar. I know you are staying on to take on questions, and so we would move to the panel sessions and and then we'll take questions and answers. So please, if you have any questions for Mr. Boubacar Suleiman, throw them into the chat box, and he will be glad to take them. But thank you very much. I was listening keenly. I like the way you have demonstrated innovation in a corporate setting, Sterling Bank, and how these things are bearing fruits. One of the things that was very touching was when you said experimentation should be encouraged, and because in the corporate setting, obviously, people get punished for breaking things. So that's one of the things I would take away personally. I know others will have their key nuggets they're taking away. So thank you once again, and I would proceed to the next segment.
Thank you. Thank you. I will remain here for the question and answer.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So I would move swiftly to the panel session. Here we would be we don't have enough time for a debate, even though I would have loved to have that debate. But here I have a very rich and diverse group of people who would be speaking to us about corporate innovation as well from their experiences. Because they are diverse, I'm sure the audience would learn a lot and have an opportunity to ask questions and perhaps even collaborate thereafter, because one of the key things we are trying to encourage here is sewing that thread across those interfaces, university, industry, and academia, university, and industry. So I would introduce my dear panelists, and I'll welcome you. Thanks for joining us. I will start with, maybe I'll just do it in sequence now. Mrs. Betsy Ugonna, thanks for coming. She is the CEO of Scale Vision Services Limited. And then she is also the Pioneer CIO, the Chief Innovation Officer. Was the Pioneer CEO, CIO of Research, Technology and Innovation Division of the NMPC Limited from March 2020 to October 2022. This is a very, very important role especially because it is the first ever public sector CIO position in Nigeria that was ratified by the Nigerian president. Today, she leads Scale Vision Services Limited with over 35 years experience in the Nigerian oil and gas industry. She leads an agile and innovative team to solve local economic challenges. Well, you're very welcome, Mrs. Betty Ogonna. The next panelist I have here is Dr. Rita Okorafor. She's an assistant professor in the Texas A&M University. She has a PhD in energy resources engineering from Stanford University, the prestigious Stanford University. Prior to her studies, her PhD studies, prior to her PhD studies, she has spent 13 years in Schlumberger, where she left as a principal reservoir engineer. And with her research, she aims to unlock new possibilities for sustainable energy sources and improve understanding and management of crucial energy resources. You're very welcome, Dr. Rita Okorafor. And last but not the least is Mr. Oluseye Soyode Johnson. Today, he is the CEO of New Conti. He is very interested in, he practices innovation and strategic partnerships, and he's an expert in that. He has a decade of experience in corporate and startup ventures, and he is very invested in ecosystem building, and he pays attention to bold application of technology, and that's what he likes to spend his time doing. He is also a founding member of the Ericsson MTN Innovation Lab, tasked with building bold and transformative products for technology, media, and telecoms across Africa. I have given a very short version of their profiles, but that in no way is an indication of who they are and what they've done. But it's very interesting to note that this is a very, very rich panel, and we are looking forward to hearing them give us their nuggets of wisdom as well. A few housekeeping notices I'll share, and this is to the panelists. We have about 30 minutes for this session, and I would ask questions and pass the questions around, but like in the depending on the time I allot for each question, I found some innovation. So I have my teacup is my bell. So I'm going to ring my bell to give you some time to round down. I don't want to cut you off abruptly. And so, for example, if you have 3 minutes to speak, 30 seconds before the 3 minutes is over, I will ring my bell. If it's 2 minutes, 20 seconds before that, and if it's 1 minute, 10 seconds before that. But then I would like to welcome you all. And so I think the first, to start off this, I know Mr. Abubakar Suleiman has really given us, I think I'll say, academic knowledge of corporate innovation in terms of the quotes and the definitions, but richly sharing with us his experience on corporate innovation. And so that has also, kind of enabled us to start the conversation and put things in context for our audience. But before I start the panel session, I will just share a definition of corporate innovation and a definition of triple helix model so that we can contextualize our answers. I know our answers can be quite broad, but I'll just say that for the purposes of this conversation, we'll take what Mr. Abubakar Suleiman has given us and add that corporate innovation happens when organizations transform ideas and hypotheses into solutions that add value from customer, business, and societal perspectives. And the triple helix model, on the other hand, is university, industry, and government collaboration for innovation. Of course, you can extend these definitions how best you can or want, but that's in a way to contextualize our conversation. So welcome once again. And I'll throw the first question. It's a similar question for everyone. So I'll be asking Mrs. Betty Ugonna, how have you seen corporate innovation work? And by that, I mean, in your experience, you have very rich experience. How have you seen it work in the corporate innovation work? What has worked? What didn't work? And why didn't it work? If please share with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I want to appreciate Mr. Abubakar for the elaborate presentation. It's like we should all go home because he did extensive work on that. I don't even know what to add anymore. Anyway, from my experience, having retired from a very high corporate enterprise, NMPC, the corporate innovation, as Mr. Abubakar described, is just simply the corporate body looking inwards, exploring their existing facilities, and coming up with new ways of doing things that will align with their strategic goals. So from NMPC setting up the Research, Technology and Innovation Center is to sort of harness the potentials of all the staffs of all the subsidiaries to help speed up innovation within the ecosystem. However, did it work? Yes, it's a work in progress. But because a lot of people don't understand and appreciate what innovation is all about and the value that is associated with it, we experience a lot of pushback from the subsidiaries. It's like, okay, what is going to happen? What is in it for me? Are you trying to say that within my own confinement where we don't know what we are doing? What is our business development unit doing? Is it different from what the innovation department is doing? So there is need to have a lot of awareness and sensitization, and then inculcate that innovation culture in the ecosystem for it to work. And it's a lot. I had very short time, just 18 months, to put the whole thing in place. But it was a very interesting journey that sort of opened my horizon to where the world is going. And I've come to conclusion that for Nigeria to change, Nigeria industry sphere to change, with the handshake between the academia and the government providing the enabling environment, and the industries having the research, the academia focusing on their research with human-centeredness focus, things will change in Nigeria if we have that handshake. And the only tool to change things in Nigeria, adding value to all the stakeholders, is through innovation. So let me stop there for now. But corporate-wise, there is need to build in the innovation culture first and foremost, so that there won't be much pushbacks. If you extract or try to investigate the causes of failures of innovation in any ecosystem, one of the major causes is human-centered, because people don't believe in it, or they don't understand it, or they don't even know how to go about it. So inculcating that innovation culture is very, very important for that corporate innovation to thrive.
All right.
Which is basically about enhancing the existing processes for better and higher performance. So let me just stop there for now.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would pass the mic to Dr. Rita Okorafor. You have 3 minutes to just give us another flavor from your own experience, how you've seen corporate innovation work, what has worked and what hasn't worked. Thank you.
All right. So first of all, I just want to piggyback on what Betty Ugonna said of our keynote speaker, how he has done justice to this topic. And indeed, he has covered so many of the things that we should be addressing, including giving us solutions for next steps. So again, we have defined corporate innovation. I'm not going to take us through that. But one of the things that I want to talk about is joint industry projects. So the view that I'm going to come from is from where I stand right now. I am a Nigerian, but I'm currently not in Nigeria. And so I've been exposed to a different set of how, corporate innovation works from the university. I have been a recipient of funding by universities in joint industry projects. Now, the truth is that the industry themselves, they have the practical problems that we want to solve. They have things like locations, fields, funding, but they do not have the time to do all of that, to go into research. Maybe some of them may have branches of their companies, organizations focused on research, but they don't have sufficient manpower most times to do all those ideas that come up. I really like that slide that Mr. Suleiman shared, where he talked about the university comes first, then the industry before government, that slide. And indeed, the university will spend time experimenting on ideas that may or may not fail. May or may not fail, may or may not come into fruition. And so the industries themselves, the organizations, these corporate bodies, through joint industry projects, allows and empowers the academia to be able to solve some of their problems, address and experiment on the challenges that they're going through, and at the same time, just allow these people that are just free thinkers, who are not bogged down with what are financial goals, what are the objectives, to do what they just need to do, and just be free thinkers. I would draw a personal example. While I was in the corporate world, I spent a lot of time dreaming of what ifs, trying to answer questions, but those weren't part of my objectives of what I should be achieving. So that wasn't the place to be doing such a thing. Now, what hasn't worked, I would just say, is the kind of bureaucratic hurdles that people have to go through, administrative hurdles in trying to put together this kind of joint industry projects or any sort of partnerships in between. I have an example where I and a company, we had started discussions we wanted to go through, and then there was a clause in the contract on which state's law will prevail. And because of that, the project was cancelled. So this is just one of a few of the kind of things. And then again, putting what's the objectives, on the corporate side, most times it's not the objectives. They don't pay. Some people who don't understand, like Betty has highlighted, will not be able to put some priority into fostering this kind of projects that would help to build innovation at the corporate level. So I know I've heard the bell somewhere, so I'll stop for now, and we'll continue the discussion later. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And Mr. Olusheye, I think you can have the mic now and give your own experience of corporate innovation work, what you've seen, and perhaps what has worked and what hasn't worked. You have 3 minutes, please, and I'll ring the bell at 2 minutes 30 seconds.
So I just want to say that amazing keynote, and really, really happy to be part of this. I eat, sleep, and drink, this kind of stuff, and it's really, really amazing to see, people thinking this way. So, and I would say I'm by no means an expert, always learning. But from the startup ecosystem and what I've seen over the last, say, decade, right? I would say that, for me, the first part of industry would be fintech, right? So I think that fintech is the biggest example of sort of corporate innovation outcomes. I would say that, you know, without the speed and the scale of some of the most successful fintech startups, right, would not have been possible without that sort of partnershiping with the larger banks, right? So obviously the innovation was done by the startups, and then the scale in terms of transactions and usage of the products, right, came through those partnerships. And the money obviously and investment follows blitz scaling, right? So those kind of numbers were really what allowed the first sort of traction in that area. I'd also say, I mean, in my work as part of the founding Ericsson Innovation Hub and Lab, I would say that we worked on amazing projects, right? We were allowed to be, as Dr. Rita said, free thinkers, right, within a corporate environment, focused on the telecoms industry and trying to create, bold products on top of Ericsson technology. One of these projects, centered around the agricultural sector and the huge losses from lack of cold storage for tomatoes and things like that. And we're able to really tap into, the local agri-tech startup ecosystem, work with other large corporates like IHS, work with NGOs like GEMS 4, just to create something that was novel for the market, right? And I mean, obviously with innovation, sometimes some things take longer, some things don't work at all, right? Another example I would say is, for me, one of my favorite is Transsion, right? And Transsion is probably top 3, top 2 smartphone manufacturers, right, in Africa. It's a Chinese brand, but they really succeeded in inventing a high-end product while lowering the price, right, and the cost, right? They set up a Transsion design lab locally in key markets, Nigeria being one of them, and took in local university students. They worked very well with local startups to really build something that was fine-tuned and localized for the African market. And I haven't seen many other companies do that very well. And that really led to something that solved our problems, but then has really made them the leader, right, with some of the fastest selling smartphones on the continent. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. My next question would go to Betty, and that would be, because of your vast experience as well, to say what opportunities are there for the triple helix model, noting that we have also all established here that universities need to work better with industry, but also because even though today we know that NNPC is a private company, it was some sort of government organization. So you are in the best position to speak about how in university, industry, and government relationships should work. So the question then is, what opportunities do you see going forward, whether in your industry or elsewhere, where we can close those gaps better, so that universities will be talking with government and the industry better? So please help us with that. So you have 3 minutes for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the opportunities are huge, because that is the way to go. At every corridor of any enterprise today, what they are talking about is innovation, how to do things better in order to remain relevant and resilient in the market space. So the opportunities are huge. This is the time for Nigeria, especially in Nigeria, for these 3 entities to come together and have a handshake And the little time I spent as the Pioneer Chief Innovation Officer, I tried to carry out some analysis or investigation. What is happening in the industry with our industries? They are going out to China. If they have any idea at all, or they have any issues, they go outside the country to go and assess and cross-search for ideas and have those ideas developed, and they bring them back into the country for implementation. Where we have residents of high intellectual beings here in this country. Okay, what of their patented products in the shelves of all the universities? If 1%, I mean 1% of the patented products in the university shelves are come into fruition and gets into the hand of the industries that are consumer or users targeted, Nigeria will have been better off than Silicon Valley as of today. So there is huge potential. What Triple Helix is doing is very, very important. And for us to have that cohesion, the academians should know that whatever research that they are going to, they should know that the era of having research or patenting product for promotional basis is gone. That era is gone. So whatever they are doing, they have to have that handshake with the industries. Okay, what we are researching into, what we are trying to bring into the market, is there market for it? The industries, do they have use for it? Is it desirable? Is it valuable to them as industry owners? Or is it even visible? Can they produce it? Do they have the raw materials to produce it and scale it up? That when it gets to the market, the consumers or the users, by the time they get to the market in 2-3 months, 1 year after, they will still find that product in the market with its quality intact. And then coming to the federal government, will they provide the enabling environment for the industries and the academia to fuse together and bring and carry out this, both the research and then get it to prototype stage and then development. So the three entities need each other if we must take this country forward. And the anchor or the platform on which this will thrive is what Triple Helix is doing already. So the potential, going back to your question, the potential is huge. I've just been engaged as a special innovation advisor to Innovation Hub, and I just want to use this opportunity to extract what Tech Fund is doing with them, trying to bring the academia and the industry together, and to ensure that whatever the academia, what they are researching into or trying to develop is in line and in line with the thought of the industries that are going to invest in that, to make sure that the market even needs that product that they are trying to bring. So TechFund is trying to bring and infuse innovation into the research development in the universities, so that whatever they are researching will be market and users or people-based or people-centered, so that it will not just be research to end up in the shelf. So let me just stop there because I heard the bell rang. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll move to Olusheye, and I'll just be piggybacking on what Betty had said now, which was around the government and where we are as a nation. So of course, we all know we've had a transition recently. And so my question to you, Olusheye, would be where you see the opportunity, the biggest opportunity areas where this Triple Helix model can work with corporate innovation to give us the best bang for our buck, like they would say in Nigeria today.
Okay, I'll just add to what Betty had said, right? This is the most important year I firmly believe that 2023 is a year that is sort of like a door that in human history that we're never going to go behind into, right? There are fundamental technologies that are transforming how humanity is going to live for the next, however many 1,000 years maybe, right? And it's really coming in on in 20. So we cannot remain the same way we've been, and corporate innovation is part of this. I'm usually focused on deep technologies, and deep technologies are usually technologies that maybe there's a little bit more vesting time before they're commercial, right? So you look at things like 3D printing and mixed reality and AI. But these things are now, right? I mean, we know that Apple just launched its Apple Pro Vision headset, right? These are technologies that Nigeria and Africa cannot stay behind in. So for me, I would really put my focus there, because Triple Helix is really what built industries like the space industry, which I'm really over the last decade I've been part of. So I'm on the board of Gen Space, that is focused on commercializing space technology. The space industry is worth about 480 billion. Africa is about 4% at about 20 billion, right? But space is only possible through the double helix, right? A couple of years ago, in 2010, the UK was scared that they were being left behind the US, behind China, behind India in satellite technologies. And so, they created something called the Business Incubation Centers, the BICs, right? To unlock commercial potential of this deep tech research, right? So it was connecting the university research that a lot of startups didn't have access to, right? To innovative, agile, space startups and founders, right? By 2018, right, about 8 years later, right, they had celebrated 67 startups, right, as a milestone, a survival rate of 94%, right, and investment of up to about 40 million pounds, right, in these startups, about 18% of the entire UK space sector. I mean, by all indications, it was really a success. And for me, it's centered around what they did with the BICs, which is the foundation was the triple helix. This has to happen for additive manufacturing, just technologies, mixed reality, like we just saw with Apple, generative AI, just like with Chat GPT that we're seeing. Otherwise, Africa will keep saying, oh, these technologies are too far away. Let's solve electricity. Let's solve this. And then we never, ever become producers. We stay consumers globally. And we have to be part of the global narrative.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope our participants or our listeners are taking notes, because these are some very, very rich perspectives. Dr. Rita, I'll come back to you, and I've noticed I rejigged the sequence because I wanted to extend your initial conversation. You were speaking about how you've experienced corporate innovation, and perhaps in conjunction with the triple helix model, where you're Nigerian but you're not in Nigeria. So the question is, how would you compare and perhaps migrate what's happening there, the best practices there, to Nigeria? So the question essentially is, from what you see happening where you are, how do you envision us applying the best practices and getting ourselves off the ground here in Nigeria, based on the triple helix model and, of course, corporate innovation, where corporates participate in this innovation space? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So, when Olusegun was talking, there are lots of things that came up, but one thing I just want us to use as a basis is that when we see products today, they are from years of innovation and research back. So if we're starting anything now, we may not expect to see the outcome right now. And we need to be very proactive as we move, as we want to play in the global space, in what's going on. So most of the things that I have seen here that I would really love that we can transfer back, this transfer learning, is the role the government, the academia, and the industry are playing in the 3 different spaces. And I'll speak on each of them, hopefully within my 3 minutes. So with regards to the government, their role is very important because most of these things are very expensive. most of the projects, demonstrations that people want to do are very expensive. The industries do not have it in their P&L to spend as much money to do those experiments. The academia may not have it unless maybe they are privately funded. And so it relies on the government to be able to provide grants, funding opportunities, subsidies, and incentives to be able to make the industry and the academia to participate in innovation and research. So this is the role that I see that the government should really play as we begin to move forward and think about the triple helix model. Now, with regards to the industry, I earlier mentioned that they have the problems or they see it from a practical perspective, but they may not have the resources and the time, but they are able to offer mentorship. So for instance, some of the projects that we go in for funding for, we are asked for cost share, and maybe the industry may not be able to give us money, but they're able to say they will give us one of their staff that will sit with the students, the graduate students, and provide mentorship and ensure that whatever we are trying to do research on is relevant to the industry. Then on the side of the academia, there are two things. One is, what is the quality of the people in position that are, carrying out this research, the professors, the lecturers, etc. How are they being trained? What's their qualifications, etc. So those ones, having industry experience, having exposure is very important so that the kind of problems we are addressing are very relevant to the industry. Ojong, I don't know, are you about to ring the bell for me?
I rang it already.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. And then the students themselves, the people, being able to get the kind of training that is relevant to be able to address the problems for the industry. So all in all, we can't do all these things by ourselves. We need that group, the group, the three parts of it together, having technology, infrastructure residing where it should be, being funded, and having the intellectual capacity to carry out those research. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If you noticed, I was being very lenient because I was enjoying, and I'm sure others were enjoying the conversations. We are running out of time, so I will just give perhaps 40 seconds each for you to wrap up. You might have just a one-liner, you can have a couple of sentences. Just share something that the audience will take away in the context of our topic, which is, combining or leveraging the triple helix model for corporate innovation, noting the keynote speakers' information or guidance and I would say recommendations. So I'll go sequentially. I'll ask Betty to give her 40 seconds, and then Dr. Rita, and then Olusheye in sequence. So please give your...
Okay, thank you very much. As you just said, that innovation is the way to go if we must make Nigeria a better place. And the only way to succeed in that is to have a handshake between the government, the industry, and the academia. The government providing the enabling environment and establishing innovation policy, which is yet to be done in this country. The industries, trusting and believing in the work that the academias are doing, the research they are carrying out, and the academias ensuring that whatever they are researching into is human-centered, which must be viable, valuable, and then feasible, so that the industries that we want to invest will be sure of investing into something that will give them competitive advantage when it gets to the market. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rita?
Okay, so what I just want to say in my 40 seconds is we have a vast amount of talent located in Nigeria. And that is the talent that we need to be harnessing. And if we are not using things like the triple helix model, such as combining the efforts of the government, the industry, and the people, we will be losing a lot of our, capabilities. We will not be harnessing them properly. We will not be also transferring knowledge to the next generation, and we'll keep on relying on outside of Nigeria. So I feel that for us to move forward, we need to start taking it very seriously. Government being able to provide funding, provide policies, incentives, and academia being up to par to be able to provide the support and to give the industry the confidence that the industry is able to carry out the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
Okay, just really quickly, I'll say that some leapfrog moments, right, or leadership in technologies will not happen by themselves, right? They will not be supported, they will not be grown, they will not happen organically, right? Government sometimes has to shoulder and de-risk some of these opportunities, right, by providing and allocating something in budget, right, that allows it to be something that other, that private sector then says, okay, this is the risk enough for me to step in. This is what happened with Silicon Valley, with the semiconductor industry that really kicked off Silicon Valley when it was just a field of maize. It's happened in many other ecosystems where the countries know we want to dominate in X years in this area. Let's incentivize, let's put money. It doesn't make sense, but this is an area we need to go into. And then everybody else comes in on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would say a very big thank you to the panelists. You might just have 1 or 2 minutes to answer questions from the Q&A session. So I don't know, Secretariat, do we have any questions? Whilst we look for that, maybe someone, if there's a raised hand, we can pick someone from the audience or mute their mics and let them ask a quick question. Secretariat, is there any question on the chat box?
Yes, there are some questions.
Okay. Would you mind reading maybe 2?
Okay, let me start from the question by Paul Lambert. So he said, most corporations, while trying to innovate, sometimes ignore the strength of the academia. How do we ensure that there is strong link between the academia and the corporation to properly leverage the targeted research guided by the industry?
All right, I think Dr. Rita already answered that question, but I'll just ask, take 30 seconds to wrap it up because she had run out of time.
So what I would just say is that the link between how the industry and the academia can work is through things like the industry providing mentorship, while the academia, of course, have the people and the time to do the work. So that connection where you provide let's say, graduate student to be working on an industry project, and there's joint advising from the academia, the professors, and the industry, a mentor would really help to drive the kind of innovation we're looking for.
Right, thank you very much. What's the second question?
Okay, this is by Chika. Lack of intellectual property protection in Nigeria will also affect innovation. People want a place where their IP can be protected. What is the advice on how this can be handled?
Okay, I'm just flipping a die here. So Oluseyi, do you want to take that?
If I get that right, people are scared of corporate collaboration because of stealing of ideas. Is that, was that the question?
Yes, I think that's the question.
Okay, all right. I think that this is a problem globally, right? You have a lot of companies that have worked with Twitter, worked with Facebook in the past that have complained about, these companies taking their ideas after integrating, right? So it's not a problem just linked with us. I think that you want to, first of all, not go to a corporate partnership with just an idea, right? You want to go with something slightly finished, right? At least something that has some traction, something that's a complete product, so that that you're bringing something to the table, not just an idea, right? And that means that you're able to there's more you can bargain with, right? And I think that it's more about execution, right? A lot of people complain about, maybe my idea will be taken if I share it. I think that it's not just about the idea, it's about how you execute. It's about how you think about, your go-to-market and things like this. So don't be too scared about that. I think corporate innovation is more beneficial to you as a startup than not.
Thank you very much.
Let me also add quickly one thing. I feel that if people have ideas, they should just start by filing patents for it, so that once it's filed or it's somewhere being processed, then they can share and start doing the things that they need to do, so that there wouldn't be any fear that somebody will steal their idea if the process of filing has started somewhere.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rita. And because of how important it is, I'm going to throw it also to Abubakar Suleiman, because you've led an innovative organization. How would you address those fears from maybe startups or smaller organizations that you want to work with, or you actually would have worked with?
Well, thank you. The first thing about innovation is that let's not assume that innovation is meant just for the Nigerian market. So when you genuinely enter into areas of new knowledge, there are other ecosystems where the IP protection laws are very strong, and you can very quickly protect your IP and start to monetize. The second one ties to the earlier question about how the time it takes to commercialize innovation means that it's really hard to get industry behind it. The truth is that innovations have different layers of commercialization. And what you need to do at every point is to understand the ultimate game is to have a major breakthrough. But at every point, there are layers of that innovation that can add value to the organization today. And therefore, it gives them a reason to continue to support the bigger research that will lead to a breakthrough. And finally, there was a conversation around how do you get industry really committed to this? My thought process is we need to start to make the employees in industry part of the research. We need to start to collaborate with them on research. We need to start to give them credit for some research, because that way the researcher in the university has an advocate in the company that ensures that they will get funded and continue to push it. Because a lot of the people who end up in industry themselves have some level of academia embedded in their study, right? So it's easy to pull them out of that space and bring them on board, which is what I meant by we need to expand the scope of resources available. You have far more chance to get your research funded if somebody in the institution is actually part of the research team and is therefore pushing for you to continue to get funding.
Right, thank you very much. Secretariat, is there one more question you can take before we wrap up this segment?
I think there is a question directed to the keynote presenter. Said, you mentioned some innovation effort of Sterling Bank. How do you measure and track the progress and success of this innovation effort? How would you advise other organizations to measure this?
So the pathway to innovation for us is we give it a lifeline. And we agree from the beginning, you've got this much money and you've got this much time. And at the end of that period, you should be able to migrate that idea or that product from your research lab, which is the strategy and innovation lab, into a commercial unit. And we deem it successful if a commercial unit is willing to take on that innovation and continue to spend on it. It means that they see that the revenue or the value coming out of that is more than their cost to keep it going. When nobody is willing to adopt that child, becomes an orphan child, it then means that at that point, that innovation has not yet delivered commercial value. It doesn't mean that we kill it. It means we have to re-evaluate it and ask, is this something to be commercialized at all? Sometimes the value you've created is reasonable, but it's not meant for commercialization. And so you start to find the right partner to pass on those value to. And we had instances like that, where we've created something, we know it's valuable, but it's not valuable within the bank. So who is the partner that can benefit from it, and we'll pass it on.
All right, thank you very much. And this, I would hate to do it, but we have to put a stop to it because we are running dangerously out of time. I don't want to stop, but I'm sure we just have to stop. So on that note, I'll say a big thank you to the keynote speaker and our panelists. And I believe you can reach out to them and ask some more questions through perhaps their social media or LinkedIn handles. So thank you once again, and I would be pushing it to the closing remark for the Vice President's Innovation to come on and give us a few words. We really have to apologize. We might run over by maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you. So, Mr. Tangod, are you there?
Right, thank you. I would say thank you. I actually took notes of the discussion, especially the keynote presentation from Mr. Suleiman, an excellent panelist, Dr. Rita, Madam Betty, and of course, Oluseyi. Moderator, you did a very good job. I think we're actually getting closer to where we want to get. So we are looking at Triple Helix, how to actually integrate effort from universities, from industry and academia to actually create innovative product. Our vision is basically vision 10-10-10-10. And I think that this discussion has actually done justice to that. Our objective is basically to actually integrate all the discussions we've had now, put up a framework, we will step like a blueprint that the universities can actually use to actually move forward, to actually think of how then do you create market-driven research? How do you industrialize what you have created to move beyond just creating a small startup, but think of listing. How many years will it take for me to get listed, to create sustainable entities so that universities can actually get monthly money, quarterly money from part of the companies they've created? So the discussions today, I think it's really very interesting. We are happy with what is happening. We actually thank everybody who connected, those who spoke, and then very good panelists. We are actually talented. These are all Nigerians. You've actually, if you're given the time, we'll speak here and listen to everybody. So thank you so much for coming. We'll actually move forward to host a couple of webinars, and at the end of the year, we'll integrate all the discussions and put up those blueprints and then call the industry, call the government and the universities to come and sit down and say, look, this is the blueprint that we have to commercialize research in the country, to see if we can replicate what happens in outside the country. So I'll thank NCDMB, of course, for the effort they've put together to actually get us up to this point. Of course, NUC, when you talk about research, Triple Helix, you have to bring NUC, nice support. And of course, from Cypher Crescent, these three organizations actually help to actually drive Triple Helix. We're calling for more organizations again to come around to support Triple Helix as we move. The objective is basically how do we reduce and close that gap between the industry and the university and so on. So we'll continue again. So on the 20th of July, we're going to have our next webinar on funding options to the equalization of research and innovation in Nigeria. Not different from what exactly the discussion that we've been having. I think we printed this research. We'll come to start looking at, you have the research. How then do we actually commercialize that research? What are the funding options that exist? How innovative it is? And basically what will connect again on the 20th. So on that note, I'll thank all of us and thank everybody once again, the keynote speaker, the panelists, the moderator, and all those who connected to listen to us. Thank you all for joining. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for joining in. Have a lovely evening and the rest of the afternoon for those outside of Nigeria. Bye.